Okay. Henrik, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you about such an important topic. So, why we are experiencing a climate emergency, and of course, all industry have to adapt. But why are we talking about steel? Like, why steel is relevant in this context?
Yeah, so going back to the Paris Accord and the meeting back in 2015, there was a couple of industries that were mentioned as so-called hard to abate, and one of them is steel. You have agriculture, transport there as well. So those are the ones that are tricky to sort of crack to be able to reach the 1.5-degree target that we agreed in Paris. Steel is one of them. Steel represents around 8-9% of the global CO2, so it is a real polluter. At the same time, steel is one of those materials that we use in our daily life and in many sort of parts of our infrastructure, in our products that we consume and so on. But it also happened to be one of those products that is fairly easy to actually decarbonize because it will not require that you redo the whole sort of industrial footprint. If you use brown steel, as I would call it, or green steel, you can still use exactly the same machinery, the same tools to weld or to press. And that makes it a little bit of a low-hanging fruit when it comes to transform it. And that's where we come in, our company, H2 Green Steel, which is an impact company. It's a startup, started less than 2.5 years from now, or 2.5 years ago. What we're doing is that we're starting from scratch and we're going into one of the world's most established industries, and we are not trying to disrupt it, but rather enable a change. And we're doing that by doing 3 things. So we produce green hydrogen, green iron, and green steel. And by doing that in the right location, we take away 95% of the CO2 footprint compared to the traditional way of doing steel. So it's a major impact in one of the dirtiest industries in the world.
Great. And I would like to go back a little bit in our conversation. Before starting H2 Green Steel, you worked over 20 years in Scania, which is one of the biggest manufacturers of Sweden. It's part of the Volkswagen Group and is also, of course, a big consumer of steel. So what made you switch sides?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that corporate leaders today, regardless if you're working with a big company like Scania, we were 55,000 people in the company, or 5 people, as we were in H2 Green Steel when I started 2.5 years ago. I think regardless the size of the company, we as corporate leaders, it is our damn responsibility to take a bigger responsibility for the transformation. And I think it's not only about transforming your own company, it is actually trying to lead also to try to transform the industry that you belong to. I was happy together with my colleagues to do that at Scania in a successful way, but to have the opportunity to do it from scratch with a blank sheet of paper, I mean, that was just a possibility to do that with H2 Green Steel. That was, it was a great opportunity to create something from scratch. But at the same time, being able to build a culture and a purpose with the company of leaving a legacy behind that is something that you can be proud of. So I mean, that's the driving force.
Yeah, sure. And of course, we are here at WebSummit, which have a lot of innovative ideas and companies. But the steel industry, not the one that we think like of innovation. But here we are. So the relevant and traditional industry can be as relevant as any other.
Yeah, I think what's happening here is that to be able to do this transformation of a well-established industry, you need to work in partnerships, and you need to work like we do in partnership with our customers. There is a number of forward-leaning customers in the automotive industry, in building and construction material, that want to have the green steel. They are supporting us in this. But it's also about investors. We raised 6 billion euro as a startup from scratch, without an income statement, without a balance sheet. 2 billion euro in equity and 4 billion euro in debt. We did that because we had a support from our customers who signed up on buying these products for the future. We also have partnership with our technology providers, providing then the technology for hydrogen production, for iron making and steel making. But another important partner in this is, of course, the people, and having a higher purpose as a company like we have. Not only trying to build a great company, but actually trying to transform, what I said before, a whole industry to make an impact for the world. That is attracting talent from different kinds of industry, different kind of sectors. And an important pillar in doing this is that we build a tech company from scratch. We haven't built a steel mill in Europe since 1972. So of course in 50 years there's a lot of things around digitalization, automation that has happened. And that we need to take the opportunity to use. Otherwise we will not be able to provide a cost-efficient sort of alternative to the brown steel being more sustainable. So us being here in a location like this is that we are of course building one of our sort of partnership pillars is on the people that we can attract to the company. And if we are around 300 people today, a big portion of that is actually people working with our digital footprint. Because if we build up from scratch an industry that is sort of designed around data, designed around information, having maybe 100 times the amount of sensor capabilities in our industrial production than the traditional industry that is then 50, 70 years old. That is what's going to compensate the lack of experience we have.
Okay.
So I think that that's why a traditional industry participant like ourselves, but being a enabler or a newcomer coming in as a startup into this industry, we need this kind of competence that we see at the WebSummit. We need the digital sort of agenda to be one of the main pillars for us to be competitive, not only today, but tomorrow. Because what we do is actually we're creating a production process where we use renewable energy to produce green hydrogen. It's a little bit more expensive than using then fossil gas or cooking coal, which is the dirty part. But to compensate for that, then if we build a modern sort of production system, we will still be able to keep the premium down to a level that is acceptable by our customers. And that level today is around 25% higher price for the green steel than the brown steel. But to be able to reach that level, we need to have a much more efficient production facility. So if we produce 5 million tons of green steel per year, we will have roughly half the amount of people in the production as the best sort of traditional player. And that is because of digitalization and automation.
Great. And you mentioned the investments. You also have already huge clients, but you hasn't started yet the production. So I'd like to understand how have you built this trust to have major companies and big investments without the production yet?
Yeah. What we have done is that we have spent a lot of time to understand not only our customers, the ones who buy the steel, but actually spending a lot of time thinking about and talking to our customer's customer.
Okay.
So actually the one who buys a car or a fridge or a freezer, the consumer that buys a product that is built by green steel. And by doing that, we have also understood sort of like what is the willingness to pay for a product that is decarbonized. That is one part of it. The other part is that we have only gone after customers who have signed up on science-based targets,
okay,
which means that they have done their homework and they have looked at, okay, what is our scope 1, our scope 2, but also scope 3 upstream, which means that what is the CO2 content of the material that we put in to build our fridge or our truck or our car, and how big is that footprint? And by going after those customers who have sort of done that homework and are committed to do a transformation, usually within 10 years, many of them from 2020 to 2030, they want to halve their CO2 footprint. And if you look at the car, for example, that everyone can relate to, an electric car, then roughly 600 kilos in that car is steel. And many times when we go out and buy a car today, an electric car, they are branded and marketed to us as consumers as a CO2 neutral product. And what the car companies have done is that they have tried to source then sustainable material as much as they can. And the remaining part, which today unfortunately is quite big, they buy then certificates. They buy CO2 certificates that are traded on the European trade emission system, the ETS, which today cost around €100 for 1 ton of CO2. So they compensate by buying then these certificates. The total bill for the car company to do that is around €500-600. And they believe that we as consumers are willing to pay that, because when we buy an electrical car, we have some sort of conscious and some sort of environmental agenda. We would also be willing to maybe spend that 2-3% or 1-2% extra by also having the material sourced in a sustainable way. And that's where we come in, and we then say, we have an alternative. Instead of buying these certificates, you can get the real thing from the source. And then it's important that we then land on a price that is actually lower than the certificate. And that is basically what we have done. Becoming a little bit technical, but 1 ton of steel emits 2 tons of CO2 when we produce it today. That's why it's such a dirty industry. What we do is we take away 95% of that, which means then that instead of paying then to take away 2 tons of CO2, which would be then €200, they pay roughly then €150 from us, and they get a much better material. And I think that's how we've been able to convince the customers that this is not just because they like us as a product or it's for marketing or branding, it's pure economics. And I think this is when you get traction in this transformation. And by having then around 30 customers, a lot of them, the automotive players in Europe, supporting us and their suppliers, we've been able then to, and I can show a picture of that, started to build on our first facility up in northern Sweden.
To 2025, right?
Yeah, so and start of production will be in December then 2025, so a little bit more than 2 years from now. And to fund this sort of €6 billion project, we have used then these contracts from our customers as a collateral and a security to our banks. And of course, this has also been an important part of why investors have put their trust in us as well. The idea then is that we build our first plant in northern Sweden. It will just be around 3-4% of the European steel production, but it will be a front runner. It will show the rest of the industry that it's possible, it's technically possible. And then what we do is then we try to copy and paste this concept. So one of the locations will be most probably here in Portugal to start with, where we're looking at there's good conditions, renewable energy, and there's good logistics, a lot of talent and competence in the country. We're looking at Brazil, northern Brazil, to do the same thing. So following our customers, because they have this global commitment to the science-based targets. Of course, it's not enough that we supply them with green steel in Europe. They need help in South America, North America, and so on. So I think this is how we roll out to become then a global player in a short time.
And we are talking about companies such as Vale, Porsche, Mercedes, IKEA, which are very important, relevant companies. So I'm from Brazil, as you mentioned, and we have a mining sector that is truly important for our economy. We are one of the top producers of steel, but we still had some major environmental problems related to this industry, and especially in extraction of the materials. This is a concern for you, like how this process of extraction can be less impactful?
Yeah, it's very important for us. You can say that we build our company with a purpose to decarbonize hard-to-abate industries. And then you can ask yourself, who are we building the company for? Yeah, we have looked at it as we have 4 stakeholders. They are our jury. They are the ones that sort of we are responsible, and they are the ones judging our decisions today, tomorrow, and our legacy. It is our customers, it is our people in the company, it is our investors and owners, And those are the traditional stakeholders you talk about the company though. We added 2 more, and that is the society and the planet. All 5 are equally important for us, and they steer the decisions we make today, tomorrow, and for the future. And that's why sort of understanding our impact in the environment is very important, all the way back to the mining operation. And that's why we put sort of demands on our partners on decarbonizing their supply chain and their footprint. Same goes for logistics and transport. And it's coming back to this partnership model of working very close with your partners and setting up a roadmap together on how you bring down the footprint on one hand, but then that is the CO2. Then you have the social part of this, which is also then, of course, engaging with the society. And that is something that we have been very successful in our first project, where we also have to take into consideration the impact we do to the society. We are in an area where we have the Swedish indigenous people, the Sami people representing. We need to sort of take care of the natural sort of reserve areas that we are close to. So a lot of this is around interaction. I think Vale, which is the Brazilian company we're working with, I think is a role model. They have had their challenges like many other mining and industrial companies have had in the past, but it's one of the few companies actually who had created a scope-free downstream target, which means that they look at who they are selling their product to make sure that they do the least impact as possible going forward. So selling to us as a green steel producer rather than to a brown steel producer, they are measuring themselves and they have a target that they have signed up on.
We have 1 minute left, and I would like to mention that today you were recognized from a tiny little magazine called Time, one of the 100 most influential leaders in the world driving climate action in business. So is this important for such an important magazine to have a list of people, and you are one of them?
Yeah, no, but I think that is a recognition to all the people that I work with in the last couple of years, both at Scania but also now in HG Green Steel. And I would say it's not about me, it's about sort of like the accomplishments we have done together. It comes back to this responsibility though as a corporate leader, and that I would tell to anyone who's listening today is that, I mean, it's time to step up. I mean, the planet is on fire. A lot of the transformation that needs to happen is up to us as corporate leaders. It doesn't matter if the company is small or big, if it is in tech or traditional industry, we have to step up and we have to show the way. It's about legacy. It's about the legacy that you leave behind for the next generation of leaders in your company, but also the legacy that you leave behind for the next generation in your family. And I see that as my driving force, and I think you should do the same.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Henrik.
Thank you.
Thank you.